Start the concept section from section number 4. Section number 4 deals with government and the macroeconomy. So, what do you mean by macroeconomy? The study of the whole economy. When we say micro, it's the study of the individuals and the firms. When we say macro, it's the study of the whole economy. So, government plays a very, very, very high and important role over here. So, ultimately, to say you can see that throughout these sections hereafter till chapter number 39 till the last section, we'll be discussing the government, the government, the government, and the government. Okay. So the government's role will be very highlighted here. So it will look like as if you're studying about the government. So the role of the government here is there are some factors which influence the role of the government. How far it influences? It differs according to the perceived extent of market failure. So what's the market failure? It's a recessionary period or whatever it is. And how the government policy is effective. It depends on the following 5 factors with respect to political ideology. So how the approach is from the government. Okay. Socialist or capitalist approach. Second, economic conditions, whether it's recession or inflation or unemployment. Third, social needs. What is the immediate necessity, healthcare or education or welfare during the pandemic time? Not only particular nation, almost it's pandemic, right? So all the nations all over the world, they were fighting to save the life. So health was given more importance. Fourth, external pressures may be there, which is globalization. That is because of competitive environment and international agreements. Public opinion, demand for services, and taxation levels. How is the government influencing the local economy, which is what you call as the local government? It manages services like waste collection, housing, schools, libraries, and the transport. It provides infra to support businesses and communities. It sets local taxes like property tax, like we have the health tax and the to fund the services. Encourages local department projects to boost employment. And not only that, it gives subsidy to private sector industries. Why? When the private sector industries grow, then the unemployment will be reduced. So to prevent unemployment, excuse me. Functions of government at national and local and national level. So at the local level, we'll be discussing on education, housing, sanitation, local transport, community services, and local planning. Whereas at the national level, you'll be discussing defense, foreign policy, national infrastructure, regulation of industries, taxation, and redistribution of income. Managing macroeconomic policies also. When we see the role of government, we'll be saying it's acting as a government. We consider the government as a producer. Why is that? Because we need to correct the market failures, okay, provide public goods, ensure national security and strategic interest, promote social welfare, support economic stability, create national champions. Whom do you call as national champions? They are very large firms. The government has a national monopoly, which means it controls vital industries for public interest like railways, utilities, and all. When we talk about strategic industries, those are defense, energy, and transport, essential for national security and stability. National champions are the large firms supported by government to compete globally. Okay, they're supported by government. Public sector contracts and partnerships. Governments will outsource services to whom? It's not going to do all the jobs by its own self. To the private firms like construction, healthcare. So they will be having a partnership like called as public-private partnership. It's a joint project to share cost and risk, and the aim is to improve efficiency and reduce burden on taxpayers. Consider government as an employer. It employs millions in public services like teachers, doctors, we have polices and civil servants. Set standards for wages like minimum wages they have to pay and also the working conditions. You should not work for more than 9 hours a day. Influences overall employment levels in the economy. What's the role of the government at the international level? So far we were discussing with respect to local and national level. Now goes with international level. First goes with MNCs. So it defines policies to attract, how it's going to generate the jobs, how it's going to increase the input and defeat to protect our domestic firms. You remember something called as dumping duty we studied? Trade blocs is nothing but group of countries with free trade agreements. So, like European unions and Asian countries where it's not IE, okay, Asian countries where they will have an agreement to trade freely. Okay, it's the agreement between nation to nation. Free international trade promotes global efficiency, specialization, and consumer choice. Also, so you'll get more of consumer. You'll get more of choices. It negotiates treaties, tariffs, and trade policies. Protects domestic industries while encouraging exports. That's it. Let's go for chapter number 25. What is the aim of the government here? Here we are talking about the macroeconomic aims. First one is economic growth. When we talk about economic growth, we have actual economic growth and potential economic growth. Actual economic growth is increase in real GDP due to what? Higher demand and utilization of resources. Whereas potential economic growth is increase in productive capacity in the long run growth. Okay, we have potential to do it. So that's about. So you might have studied this earlier. So this is the actual and potential economic growth. This is always dealt with consumer goods and capital goods. So we have in the z-axis here with respect, not z-axis, in the x-axis here with respect to consumer goods and here with respect to capital goods. So once it increases, so this one is going to be the actual and this one is going to be the potential. So once it increases, okay. Obviously increases means what? So at this point, it increases from here to here. Just imagine it increases from here to here. So what happens? The consumer goods increases and also the capital goods increases. Aggregate demand is defined as, you remember, consumption from plus investment aggregate of all the demands. Okay, government and net exports. Aggregate supplies, the total output producers are willing to supply at different price levels. Please highlight, not particular price level, different price level. Okay. You supply at one price level, I supply at a different particular price level. So we all put together work. So it's a different price level. We have actual economic growth, potential economic growth. Actual economic growth, we are defining here with respect to a shift in the demand curve from this line to this line. Okay. When there is a shift in the demand curve, this is my aggregate supply. See, it goes like this. This is my aggregate supply. Okay, please join. Okay, this is my demand curve. So the point is over here. This is the output Y. Now, what happens when I talk about actual economic growth? The demand increases. Am I right? So it shifts over here. And this is the output Y1. Okay. Whereas if we talk about the potential, how the, how the industries are willing to supply. Here's the aggregate supply and it's been extended here where it goes to the curve is shifted to the right side. This is the aggregate supply curve 1. The demand curve is considered the same and it's been shifted. So here we get the same output. Can you please highlight here? Here we get the same output. The next is potential economic growth causing a rise in national output. See, when we see this diagram, second diagram, we were considering only the demand curve not changing. But here, the aggregate curve, instead of here, see here, this is the line, red line. It has now been shifted. It's been shifted means what? Output is changed. Here, output is not changed. Here, output is changed. That's the only difference. Okay. So, it's causing a rise in national output. Is it okay? Shall I continue? What's the reasons behind this? Higher living standards maybe, more employment opportunities, increased government revenue, and greater competitiveness internationally. What's the criteria set by government? It is targeting GDP growth rate 3 to 5% annually. And not only that, it should be a sustainable growth, avoiding inflation and the environmental damage also. Low unemployment is the main theme behind the macroeconomic. So first one, we are talking about economic growth, right? Is it right? First one, yeah. Second one, we are talking about employment. The unemployment should be low. So what do you mean by full employment? Who are willing and able to work at current wage rates, who can find jobs. Economically active, so we have done this in the key terms, you remember? Economically active people in the labor force, employed plus unemployed. Unemployment rate is the percentage of the labor force without the jobs. Reasons for aiming at unemployment: to reduce poverty, to reduce inequality, increase the output, increase the efficiency, reduce the government spending on welfare benefits. Criteria set by government: target unemployment rate below 5%, balanced employment across regions and sectors. So price stability, keeping inflation low and stable. Inflation rate, which means percentage increase in the general price level over the time. Reasons for aiming at price stability is why? Why? To protect purchasing power of consumers and also to encourage investment and savings. If I have 100 rupees, I am ready to spend the whole of 100 rupees. What about tomorrow? It will be made zero, right? Which means you are spending all the 100, it's made zero. What about tomorrow's status of yours? See, which means there should be proper investment and savings. So they are protecting the purchasing power of consumers. Is it okay? And prevents wage price spirals. You remember? Demand price goes on. Remember? Criteria set by government targets inflation rate 2 to 3% and avoids hyperinflation or deflation. So it has to remain in this range. Next, third aim is balance of payment stability. Records all economic transactions between a country and the rest of the world. Why it aims for this? To prevent excessive borrowing from abroad. See, what do you mean by balance of payments? Is dealing with the global, right? Payments and the value of exports and value of imports. Maintains currency stability and ensures sustainable trade and investment. Criteria set by government avoid large current account deficits and maintain adequate foreign reserves. Redistribution of income. Government policies to reduce inequality by redistributing wealth. What's the reasons behind this is promotes fairness and social justice, reduces poverty and improves access to healthcare, education and housing. Criteria set by government, progressive taxation. So you remember progressive taxation, proportional taxation. So the government is setting up progressive taxation. So higher earners will pay more. Welfare programs and subsidies and minimum wage policies are also there. Okay. Possible conflicts between macroeconomic aims, priority and trade-offs, economic growth versus price stability. Okay. This is rapid growth that may cause inflation. Low unemployment versus inflation. Reducing unemployment can cause demand inflationary pressure also. Economic growth versus balance of payments. Growth may increase imports. So you're growing, which means you are ready to import and that's causing trade deficit. Redistribution and growth. Higher taxations for redistribution may discourage investment. Okay. And government is giving priority on depending on the current economic conditions. Like if it is recessionary period, it's focusing on growth and jobs. In the case of inflation, it's focusing on price stability. Inflation means you're ready to pay any price to buy any objects. Okay, of your needs. Let us go for chapter number 26, fiscal policy. The content we are going to discuss over here is the budget. What do you mean by fiscal for that current year? That's what we call as fiscal. The budget, a financial plan showing government revenue and expenditure over a period, usually 1 year. We have budget deficit and budget surplus. When the deficit means what? You are in shortage. Okay, spending exceeds revenue, whereas the government revenue exceeds the spending. We'll call this a surplus, and the national debt, the total amount the government owes due to accumulated deficits. Reasons for government spending: to influence economic activity, to reduce the market failure, to promote equity, and to pay interest on national debt. Okay. We have something called as multiplier effect, which is causing a larger rise in national income. What's the reasons behind to levy taxation? See, already we have discussed this one. Why? To redistribute income from rich to the poor, to discourage the consumption of demerit goods like cigarettes and all, to raise the cost of firms that impose cost on others. What is that cost on? External cost. You remember? To discourage the consumption of imports and hence protect domestic industries to influence the economic activity. We have different categories or types of taxes. One is direct tax paid directly to the government by individuals. Like we have income tax, corporation tax and all. See, if your income is $50,000 and you have to pay 20%, which means you're paying 10,000. It's the first one. Second one, indirect tax levied on goods and service. For example, you can take GST. And who's collecting that? Not by government. Actually, the sellers are collecting and they will be paying it back. If they say GST is 10% on the items you buy, on the goods you bought for $200. So you're going to pay $20 as GST. So totally how much you're going to pay to the seller? 220. But the seller is going to get only 200. 220 will be given to by the government. fully pooled. Okay, fully pooled. Third is progressive tax. Tax rate increases as income increases. So higher earners pay more. So if this is your income $20,000, tax at 10%. But if your income is increased to $1 lakh, it is taxed at 30% because your income is high. Proportional tax, same tax rate applied to all income levels, which means flat. Okay, 20% for same, 20% for same. Okay. Next is we have something called as regressive tax. Takes a larger percentage from low income earners compared to high income earners like sales tax. Okay. From low income earners, we are going to tax more. So regressive. Progressive means what? Just take the reverse. Progressive means what? Higher earners will pay high tax. Here, just a reverse. Okay. Sixth is income tax, tax on individual earnings like salaries or wages. Seventh is corporation tax. This is the tax on the company profits, which is nothing but the business profits. Capital gains tax, tax on profit from selling the assets. Okay. Your granny sells the assets, she has to pay the tax. Sales of shares and property. Ninth, inheritance tax. So any of your family member dies and that wealth is passed to you after their death. It's called as estate tax. And tenth one, local tax like property tax, waste collection tax, and so on. Okay, so we have a list of 10. Okay. The principles behind the taxation is equity should be there. Okay, efficiency should be there. Certainty, which should be clear and creditable, which taxation rule is applicable. Convenient to pay and collect, and economy, like low cost of collection. Impact of tax, it affects consumer spending. So automatically you think and have to pay so much on taxation, so I'll reduce my spending. Business investment, overall economic activity can influence inflation, employment, and income distribution also. Tax base, the total value of income, assets, and transactions that can be taxed like wages, property, sales, and all. Tax burden, the actual impact of taxation on individuals or firms, showing who ultimately pays the tax, can be shifted between producers and consumers depending on the elasticity, depending on the price elasticity. So we have the figure over here. This is the demand curve. Okay, this is the supply curve. Usually S is the supply curve. At this point, this is the equilibrium point, the price and the quantity. Now, if the supply is shifted to the left hand side, so what happens here? Quantity is reduced, price is increased. Okay, so probably you might be guessing this one. The same thing happens over here also. You can please guess. So this is inelastic demand and this is elastic demand. Okay. Impact of direct taxation, we have automatic stabilizers where taxes and welfare adjust automatically to stabilize the economy. So income tax falls during recession, boosting the demand. Impact of indirect tax may cause inflation if price rises due to higher tax, can lead to growth of the informal economy also, like unregistered businesses avoiding tax. Changes in taxes are there. Flat taxes also is there. Fiscal policy and the budget, government use of spending and taxation to influence the economy, which is managed through the, how it's managing. So that's the heading, right? Fiscal policy budget to achieve the macroeconomic goals. The effects of fiscal policy here is, when we talk about the first aim, what's the first aim? Economic growth. We can talk about expansionary fiscal policy. So greater the spending, lesser the taxation, etc. So it's going to boost the demand and output. When we talk about low unemployment, we can talk about expansionary policy, because only if you buy more number of goods, then more industries will be growing. So ultimately, more people will get the jobs. So creates jobs via public investment. Price stability, you'll go for contractionary fiscal policy. So if there is an inflation period, they have to stabilize the price. So they have to go for contracting, okay, contractionary fiscal policy. So they have to reduce the spending, okay, or increase the tax. Fourth is balance of payments, adjust tax on imports and exports. Fifth is redistribution, progressive taxation, welfare spending on it. So we have discussed what is expansionary fiscal policy and contractionary fiscal policy. So here is a figure. So we fix this aggregate supply curve. Okay. We talk about the aggregate demand curve. If there is a shift in the aggregate demand, this is having an implication over the price and the quantity. Is it okay? So at this point, the aggregate demand is defined as C plus I plus G plus X minus N, the net export, as usual. But when we talk about here, the demand curve is shifted, aggregate demand curve is shifted. You can please note, consumption is changed, investment is changed. Government and net export is not getting affected. Okay, we have to make a note of it. This is the effect of expansionary fiscal policy. Let us go for chapter number 27. 27 discusses about monetary policy. The money supply is the first content. When we talk about supply, we have already discussed about supply of goods. Here we are discussing about the money supply, where we treat the money as goods. The total amount of money circulating in the economy, including cash, deposits, and credit, controlled by the central bank through policies that influence liquidity. Changes in money supply will definitely have an impact over the aggregate demand, inflation, and the interest rates. So, okay. Monetary policy, the use of the interest rates, money supply, and exchange rate management by the central bank to influence the economic activity. So, it has to define the policy, how it's going to influence it. Changes in the money policy, whether it's going to increase the money supply or decrease the money supply. Increasing the money supply means obviously you'll get loan and all, etc. So it's boosting the spending, it's lowering the interest rates, then only you'll get the loan and all. So it simulates the economic growth. Decreasing is just the reverse. It boosts the spending, it reduces the spending, it lowers interest rates, it raises interest rates and stimulates growth, it controls inflation. Changes in the interest rate. What do you mean by interest rate? The cost of the borrowing money or reward for saving. We can say interest rates is lower or higher. Lower means it encourages borrowing, investment and consumption, whereas higher means is not encouraging for borrowing and it's reducing to spend and it's controlling inflation. We have foreign exchange rate. The interest rate changes affect capital flows, influencing currency pair. Rise in interest rates, effect on demand. We can talk in three ways. One is the past borrowing, one is the new borrowing, and one is the saving incentive. Past borrowing is individuals and the firms must pay more interest on existing loans. It's past, right? Already have borrowed the loan and you have to pay more. Obviously, that's going to have an impact on the reducing disposable income. Whereas if you talk about the new borrowing, it becomes more expensive to borrow because you're not borrow because that's the rise in the interest rate. We'll think so far we were paying 7%. Now they say 9%. Why I need to 2% extra? Okay. So it's discouraging consumption and investment. Saving incentive, higher interest rate will encourage saving. So you say that if you deposit in the bank, you'll get 9% instead of 7%. You'll be very happy, right? Okay. So it is reducing the aggregate demand. Why is reducing the aggregate demand? Because you're investing in the bank, your money is now in the bank locker. You're not going to spend it, right? Okay. Changes in the exchange rate. The value of one currency compared to another currency is what you actually call as the exchange rate, and we have something called as depreciation and appreciation. Depreciation is a fall in currency value, while appreciation is a rise in currency value. Okay. So when you talk about depreciation, exports become cheaper. So you remember either one angle, depreciation or appreciation. If your money is depreciating, okay, then exports become cheaper because if your money value is depreciated, they can buy more. The outside person can buy more. So imports become more expensive because you have to pay more. Okay, is it okay? See, the value of money was 100. Okay, now it is 150. Your value is now depreciated. Is it okay? See, for this is for $1 I'm talking about. Okay, Indian currency or whatever it is. You have to pay 150 rupees to buy the dollar, which means what? Imports are becoming expensive. Is it okay? So you remember one, you just change the value. Appreciation is here cheaper, here exports become expensive, imports become cheaper and reduces demand. Effects of monetary policy, expansionary policy, it lowers interest rates, increases money supply. This aim is to stimulate economic growth, reduce unemployment, may risk higher inflation also, and can worsen balance of payments. How? If imports rises. Is it okay? Contractionary money policy, or the other way, it raises interest rates, reduces money policy, it controls inflation, stabilize currency, and may slow economic growth because contractionary, right? Okay. Increase unemployment, can improve balance of payments by reducing imports. Chapter number 28 on supply side policies. So now the government is focusing on the supply side policy. So it's nothing but the government measure. It is designed to increase the productive capacity. Supply side means what? More of supply, right? So the government is designing to increase the productive capacity and efficiency of the economy. They aim to shift the long run aggregate supply curve, okay, to the right, promoting sustainable growth. Key measures, it improves education and training, It enhances workforce skills, productivity, and employability. Like vocational training programs are conducted and investment in schools and universities are done. It lowers direct tax and increases incentives, like reduces income and corporation tax to encourage work, savings, and investment. So lower corporation tax to attract foreign investment. Deregulation reduces government rules and restrictions to encourage competition and efficiency. So it's removing barriers to entry in industries. Privatization, transfer of state, economic growth, chapter number 29. What do you mean and what is the measurement of economic growth? Economic growth is nothing but an increase in the output of goods and services in an economy over the time is measured by how? GDP. And we have referred to the circular flow of income. It's the continuous. Circular means what? Continuous movement of money, goods and services between households and firms. See, output, income, expenditure, output. Okay. So what the households do? They provide the factor services like land, labor and all. Firms provide the products. Okay. Firms give the salary and wages, etc., and they spend that amount to buy the circular flow of income. Methods of calculating GDP. We have three methods: output method, income method, expenditure method. Output method is also called as a value method. It's just measuring the value of all the goods and services produced. Income method, it is measuring through the total income earned, like wages, profits, rents, and all. It excludes, please highlight, transfer payments because pensions and unemployment benefits are given by who? By the government. Expenditure method measures total spending on goods and services. So this is the curve equation we are following, right? Aggregate demand. Nominal versus real GDP. Yes, we have discussed this one in the key terms. Measured at current prices, not adjust for inflation. Whereas if you adjust for inflation, it's called as real GDP. Real GDP per head is the real GDP divided by the population. It shows the average income per person. Am I right? When you divide by the total, always it will go give the value for one person. One. Okay. Difficulties in measuring the real GDP. Some activities are not recorded, like small scale business activities not recorded, illegal activities not recorded, legal activity but not paying taxes not recorded, right? Subsistence agriculture is the direct producers uh, producing only for their consumption alone. So it's not recorded in the GDP. Informal economy not measured. Differences in cost of living across these countries is there, so that's a major drawback. And non-market activities like household work excluded. Okay, your mom or your grandma, they might have not gone for a job, but what happened? They are full day working in your house, okay, doing all the housework things. Obviously, their work's not included. Recession, it's a period of negative economic growth lasting 2 or more consecutive quarters. We say either 6 months. Most of the cases, we should not use the 6 months, 2 or more consecutive quarters, not a single quarter and just a break and another quarter. No, consecutive quarters. Causes fall in consumer demand, high interest rates, reducing investment, global downturn, reducing exports, financial crisis or government. There is some misspelling. Okay. So you can just go for this curve. Here, when you talk about the recession, which is caused by the aggregate demand, the demand curve is shifted below. See, not above. Above means the inflation, right? The inflationary period. Here is the recessionary period. Whereas if you talk about cost, the recession is caused by aggregate supply. It is being shifted over here. Is it okay? Left, not the right, or below, not the above. Okay. Consequences ultimately unemployment, lower incomes, living standards are lower, investment is reduced, government budget deficit increases, social problems are there like poverty and inequality. Economic growth causes increased investment in capital and infrastructure, technological progress, higher labor productivity because of education and training, discovery of natural resources and stable macroeconomic government. There are some consequences also, which is if we talk about the positive angle. See, always when you see the word consequences, how it is affected, it can be a positive effect or negative effect. Okay, you have to talk in a both angles. If they say disadvantages, then only they are talking about the negative effect. Okay, make yourself sure. So higher incomes, better living standards, more employment, improved government revenue. Negative side, environment is damaged, income inequality, inflationary pressure is there. IMF perspective is going with respect to the voting power. So you're losing your voting power. Sustainable economic growth, where that means present needs without harming the future. See, sustainable means even the future has to get the benefits. That's what about sustainable. So here, see this curve we have discussed already in the very first topic, 24, chapter number 24. Okay. So this is a long-term and short-term effects of diverting more resources to capital goods. Okay. Is it okay? The curve is okay? Economic growth rate, how it is being measured? It's a percentage change in real GDP over a period. So how the growth rate is measured? See, real GDP current minus real GDP previous divided by real GDP previous. This is how you measure, right? The real GDP previous is 10%. The real GDP current is not percent. It will be measured in dollars. So let me have it as $100. Current is 110. So what happened? 110 minus 100 divided by 110. Now. You have to see you're shifting from the previous. So it's 100. And you have to convert in percentage. That's why into 100%. Okay. Policies to promote economic growth. We have fiscal policy, monetary policy, supply side policies, and trade policies. Already we have discussed all the above three, and the trade policy is promoting the export and reduces barrier to trade. Foreign direct investment, yes, we know, encouraging multinational firms to invest innovation and technology supports R&D to boost productivity. Is it okay? Unemployment and employment. Employment, when people of working age are engaged in productive work for wages, salaries, or profits. Full employment, when all those willing and able to work at prevailing wages can find jobs, benefits, higher income, government revenue, and economic growth. Whereas unemployment is when people of working age who are willing and able cannot find the jobs. Please remember willing and ability. Two things you have to check. Okay. Unemployment rate, how it is calculated? Number of unemployed divided by the labor force, always given percentage into 100. Changes in the patterns of employment, industrial structure, shifting of primary sector to secondary. Okay. Else to tertiary. In developed economies, most workers are now in service industry only, like IT. See how India is basically a agricultural country. The major is agriculture, but everybody are shifting to IT now. Okay, that's bypassing easily. Primary to tertiary, not secondary also. Industrialization and globalization is the reason for the changes. Proportion of women in employment. Yes, rising participation due to improved education, social change, and equal opportunities. Growth in service sector jobs, teaching, healthcare, and retail, and policies promoting gender equality has reduced barriers. Promotion of workers in private and public sectors. Public sector, government jobs, like all these. Private sector, all these. Okay, trend is privatization and deregulation has shifted more workers into the private sector, right? Because more jobs are available in private sector now. Full-time and part-time workers, so growth in part-time and temporary contracts due to flexible labor markets. Part-time work suits who? For students, parents, and service industries. Full-time jobs, yes, please join. Still dominate, but they are declining in some economies. Employed and self-employed. So employed is work for firms or governments. Self-employed, freelancer, or you run your own business. Rise in self-employment due to entrepreneurship, big economy and what digital platforms. Informal and formal economy. Formal economy is registered, taxed, and regulated jobs. Informal economy is unregistered, untaxed work like street vendors, casual laborers, and all. We have developing countries often have large informal sectors. High and low quality and employment. High quality is secure, they are well paid, they have skilled jobs with benefits. Low quality is low wages, insecure, poor working conditions. Globalization and automation have widened this gap. Flexible employment with respect to flexible workforce includes part-time, temporary, remote work, and zero-hour contracts. Benefits, it's best having better adaptability, cost savings for firms, work-life balance for workers, drawbacks, job insecurity, fewer benefits, and unstable income. Changes in the level of employment, labor force participation rate. What do you mean by that? The proportion of the working age group that is economically active. Okay. Economically active means who are working or actively seeking job. Inactive means not seeking work, like homemakers, retired, discouraged workers. Factors influencing participation rate. Age structure is one factor. Education and training opportunities. Social and cultural factors and how far the jobs are available. That is the economic condition. Government policy is also there with respect to retirement age. Government is fixing a retirement. Sometimes they say 58, sometimes they say 60. Okay. Wages and incentives is also playing a important role. Measures of unemployment, how they count. Claimant count. Counts the number of people claiming unemployment benefits. Advantages is easy to obtain and it's updated monthly. Disadvantages, not all unemployed claim benefits. Eligibility rules vary. Labor force survey available for work. Advantages internationally comparable includes those not claiming benefits. Disadvantages more costly subject to sampling error. Is it okay? Subject to sampling error. Causes and types of unemployment. We have frictional unemployment. Search unemployment, casual unemployment, seasonal unemployment, and structural employment. Already we have discussed all these in key terms. I'm not repeating. Okay. Regional and technological, I'm not repeating. Cyclical, caused by downturns in the business. So we have a picture here, which is an economy producing below capacity. Okay. And we have also have voluntary unemployment, already discussed. Stock of unemployment. Yes, please make a note. What do you mean by stock of unemployment? The total. Yes, the total number of people unemployed at a given point of time. The total number of, please repeat along with me. The total number of people unemployed. Stock, which means what? It is there in the godown. Nobody is utilizing it. Okay. So the stock, the total number of people unemployed at a given point of time represents the existing pool of unemployed workers, like 1 million people are jobless today. That is the stock. Okay. Flow of unemployment, the movement of people into and out of unemployment over time includes people losing jobs, inflow of people finding jobs, outflow. Important for understanding changes in unemployment rates, not just the level. Okay. Consequences of unemployment, loss of income, lower living standards, social problems for individuals. Whereas for firm, lower demand for goods or services, reduced profits. For government, higher welfare spending, lower tax revenue. For economy, wasted resources, lower GDP, and possible social unrest. Is it okay? So you can just go for this figure. Policies to reduce unemployment. We have fiscal policy, we have monetary policy, supply side policy, trade policy. Along with that, we have what? Regional policy, because we may be focusing on particular area like. Is it okay? Inflation and deflation. What do you mean by inflation? Is sustained rise in the general price levels of goods and services in an economy. Deflation is here is a rise, here is a fall in the price level of goods. So inflation and deflation is both connected with price level only, not on quantity. Okay. So automatically that's having an impact. How you measure with the help of CPI? Measures changes in the average price of the basket of goods and services consumed by the households. How you construct this index number is you select the base year and that value has to be kept 100. Okay, for example, you want to find with respect to egg. Egg is one commodity. Okay, egg when probably in the year 2000 it was costing 3.5 rupees. Now in the year 2025 it costs 6.5 rupees. Okay, so this is not 3.5. It is taken as 100. Is it okay? So what is the 6.5? No, this is 6.5 into 100 divided by 3.5. You have to select basket of goods and services because we are talking about the CPI, Consumer Price Index. We have to talk about the consumers. Okay. You collect the prices for the base year and the current year, then you assign the weights if necessary because everybody are going to buy it. Okay, it's so very important when you compare to rice, pulses, and other things. Yes, obviously, it is important when you compare with other quantity. Need not be. Calculate the price relative. How you calculate the price relative? Always base year and base price in the denominator only. So 6.5 divided by 3.5 into 100. You compute the weighted average and you construct the index. You usually give it in percentage. Okay, select a representative basket. Okay, this and all is done. So we have the formula. Inflation rate. Yes. CPI at current minus CPI at base divided by CPI at base. So usually this is compared with the base only. Okay, you should not get confused. Given in percentage. Causes of inflation, we have cost push and demand push inflation. When we talk about cost push inflation, it is rising production costs like wages and materials and all. Cost is pushed. We have wage price spirals, higher wages, higher cost, higher prices, demand for higher wages. Again, okay. So you can just refer this cost push inflation. What happens? The supply is now limited, right? So cost shifts. Then let us go for demand pull inflation. Excessive aggregate demand, too much money chasing too few goods. So there is a demand shift. Okay, excessive. So shift to the above. Monetary inflation. Monetarist who is Milton Friedman, he says inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. So excessive growth in the money economy is what you call as the monetary inflation. The consequences, harmful efforts, fall in the value of money. So purchasing power is actually declines. Redistributes income in an unexplained way. Saves loser, borrows gain. Extra cost on firms, menu costs, frequent price changes, uncertainty, discourages investment and long-term planning, harms countries' balance of payments position, exports less competitive, fiscal drag, taxpayers pushed into higher tax brackets even if real income is on risen. Beneficial effects, we also have the beneficial effects. Moderate inflation may encourage spending rather than saving, reduces real burden of debt, borrowers benefit, signals growing demand in the economy, okay, can help firms increase revenues and profits. Policies available to control inflation. We have fiscal policy, monetary policy, supply side policy, and exchange rate policy. We will not talk about trade policy at all. Okay, you should not get confused. Because you know the term trade policy, you should not put it over here. Causes of deflation is a fall in the aggregate demand, so which means it's a recession. Excess supply of goods also maybe. Yeah, please remember, you're buying the same quantity, but the manufacturer is producing more. So what happens? The aggregate demand now is lesser than the aggregate supply. This has not changed, but this has changed. So it looks like there's a recessionary period. Okay. Tight monetary and fiscal policy. Technological progress reducing cost significantly. The consequences, households falling prices may delay spending, lower revenues, reduced profits, and possible bankruptcies for firms. Government, lower tax revenue, higher welfare spending, economic prolonged recession, deflationary spiral, falling demand, etc. etc. Okay, falling demand, falling output, rising unemployment. Policies are available to control deflation. We have expansionary fiscal policy. We have expansionary monetary policy. We have supply side policy. We have trade promotion. Is it okay? Policy conflicts, inflation versus unemployment. Reduces inflation may increase unemployment, lowering unemployment rise. Inflation, the other way. Inflation and economic growth, policies to reduce inflation may slow the growth. Inflation versus balance of payment, expansionary policies to reduce unemployment may worsen trade deficits, and inflation versus income distribution, anti-inflation measures like a higher interest rates may hurt low income households more. Is it okay? Let us go for section number 5, economic development. Starts with chapter number 32 on living standards. What are the indicators here is the real GDP per head is an indicator of living standard. Real GDP per head. Please remember how you calculate per head. Please watch it out. I have to show the page. No, you can speak. Third and fourth. Inflation versus balance of payments. It's inflated, which means what? Price level is increased. Expansionary policies will be implemented to reduce the unemployment, and that may worsen the trade deficits. Okay. Inflation versus income distribution. Anti-inflationary measures like higher interest rates will be hurting low income households more. Okay. Living standards. Real GDP per head you have to calculate. Then that gives the indicator of the living standard. Definition. Real GDP divided by population. So average income per person. It strengthens simple, widely used, shows material living standards. Limitations ignores income distribution, informal economy, environmental cost, and non-material welfare. You compare living standards between countries through how? Purchasing power parity. So that's adjusting GDP per head for cost of living differences. Allows fairer international comparisons like $1 may buy more goods in India than in the US, right? When you say $1, it's not just $1. $1 is 100 rupees in India, so you can buy more goods in India. HDI, Human Development Index, which is composite measure, will measure in this in the 0 to 1 scale, not in percentage. Okay. It combines life expectancy, education levels, and real GDP per head. It's a better indicator of overall welfare than GDP alone. Whereas if we talk about GPI, genuine progress indicator, it adjusts GDP by including social and environmental factors, considers pollution, and genuine, right? Which have to be genuine. Resource depletion, inequality, and unpaid household work. Other measures, gender inequality, we have HLEI, healthy life expectancy and gross national happiness. Bhutan's measure this well-being, including cultural values, environment, and psychological well-being. Comparing living standards and income distribution. Measures of income and wealth inequality. We have Gini coefficient which ranges from 0, which is perfect inequality, to 1. So 0 to 1 it ranges. 1 is perfect inequality. We have Lawrence curve, which is a graphical representation of income distribution. Wealth versus income, wealth inequality, often greater than income inequality. Causes of difference in living standards and inequality, economic factors, we have productivity, employment opportunities, and access to resources. Social factors is education and all, Okay. Geographical factors, government policies, global factors also, Is it okay? Shall I take over? Comparison of living standard indicators. So probably to have a better idea, I have included this table. You can just go through when you go for a second one. Okay. What are the things we discuss? All is being tabulated for the convenience sake. So just before the exam, if you want to refer, you can just refer this one. Let us go for poverty. Poverty is, you can say, absolute poverty and relative poverty. Absolute poverty is when people cannot afford basic necessities, also like life and other things, necessities of life. Measure is against a fixed poverty line, like $2.15 only they earn per day as per the World Bank standards. Relative poverty when people are poor compared to others, okay, which means they are going in Benz, we are going in Toyota. So there's a difference, right? We are comparing like this way. Defined by inequality. Please highlight. It's a beautiful word. Causes of poverty, like vicious circle of poverty we have. So it's a circle. Low income, so you cannot save more. So you invest less and the productivity is less. Low income, so it goes on. Keep individuals and countries trapped in poverty. So once the status of India was this, we were trapped in poverty. We have multidimensional poverty index called as MPI, goes beyond income like health, education, and living standards. Uh, the indicators are child mortality, years of schooling, access to clean water, electricity, and sanitation. So you can just go for these dimensions like health, education, and standard of living. Indicators how you measure the health, nutrition, and child mortality, which means at the lower age, the born child are going off, right? Death rate. Education, years of schooling, and children enrolled, and standard of living, cooking, toilet, water, and these are the standards of living. Possible government policy measures to reduce poverty, improve the quality and quantity of education so that the skill is increased, employability will be increased, and productivity is increased, promote economic growth, it creates job and rises income, reducing or raising a national minimum wage so you get fair wages and working poverty is reduced, encouraging multinational companies to step up in the economy, so it's generating employment and transfers and technology, providing benefits or more generous state benefits like social safety nets for vulnerable groups, land reforms so redistributes lands to reduce rural poverty and improve agriculture productivity. Shall I take over? Measures to raise living standards, expanding healthcare and housing access, improving infra like transport, electricity, clean water and all, promoting gender equality and reducing discrimination, supporting small businesses and entrepreneurship. Government policies on the distribution of income and wealth, progressive taxation we have already discussed. I'm not going line by line. Redistribution to welfare benefits like unemployment benefits, okay, transfer payments and all, right. Subsidies for essential goods and services like education, healthcare, housing and all. Inheritance and wealth tax already we have discussed. Policies to reduce regional inequality is also there. So for poorer areas. Let us go for next content on population. Population that affect population growth, the factors is immigration, death rate, birth rate, and net immigration. Immigration is inflow of people, inflow, okay. IM is inflow. Inflow of people, increasing population size. So India has this problem that many are coming from Sri Lanka and many are coming from Bangladesh. But I'm watching movies and all, right? Movies and movies. Birth rate is higher fertility rates, increases population growth. Death rate is lower mortality rates, increases the lower mortality, lower the death. The population growth is more, right? Net immigration, difference between immigration and emigration. Positive net immigration increases population. See, immigration means inflow. Emigration means I'm going from India to outside for job and all. Okay, to job or settle somewhere. So immigration minus immigration. This is in, okay. This is exit. You remember this thing. So what is net immigration? You subtract this immigration. So that if you think in population, reasons for different rates of population growth, infant mortality rate. So high infant mortality rate is there. Net migration. So this one we have discussed. Other influences also we have. You know. Effects of changes in size and structure of population. Population pyramid we have shows age and gender distribution. You can for this you can refer the next page. So this is what you call the population pyramid. Okay. See how it is being different. See for the age group. 0 to 4 years there are many. See when you go for 100 plus. Then that okay. That's what the population pyramid. White base, young population. Base is white. See, base is white, young population. So, okay. See, for 0 to years is white. For 70 to 80 is less. White base, white top, which means aging population. If the, see, also we may be having this type of uh, thing. Okay. This means what? This means what? Aging population. This means what? Aging population. Is it okay? See, this curve wider the base, so infant population is more. You may also have this type of a pyramid, inverted pyramid. So, aging populations. Is it okay? Dependency ratio, number of dependent age groups divided by number in the labor force into 100. High dependency ratio, greater burden on workers and government. Optimum population size that makes best use of the resources, and too small means underutilization, too large means overcrowding. Unemployment or pressure. So you can just go for this maximum and minimum. So the same concept is see this is optimal. Okay. This means underpopulation, this is overpopulation. Effect of increase in population, better use of resources and size of market increases. Increase in factor mobility, larger workforce may improve flexibility and adaptability, rise in labor force, more workers available, potential for higher output. Disadvantages, concerns about supply, if food supply cannot keep up, restrictions on improvements in living standards, overcrowding cities and housings, environmental pressure is there, pressure on employment opportunities is there, and balance of payment pressure is also there. Let us go for ways of reducing the birth rate, family planning programs. So, husband and wife should have one child, right? Okay. Education, especially female education, access to contraception, so not to get pregnant. Government policies, rising awareness about smaller families. Consequences of aging population. If the population is an aging population, then there is a high dependency ratio. Okay, high in the dependency ratio. Change in labor force. Obviously, only a few younger persons will be there. In, now the country, that country is having an aging population. So another after some 30 or 40 years, there are nobody to work. All young only less young people are there. Higher demand for healthcare, more medical services needed. Okay. Greater demand for welfare services like pension, elderly care, rise in cost of state and private pensions will be there. So this is a burden for the government, so fiscal burden, and change in pattern of demand also. So more demand for healthcare, leisure, retirement services and all. So ways to cope up with an aging population. So you can go for internal immigration. So movement of young workers to areas with more opportunities. We can raise the retirement age. Instead of fixing the 58 or 60, you can fix the retirement age at 65, 70, 100 also. Because what to do? Okay. Encouraging immigration of younger workers will be better, promoting higher fertility rates and expanding healthcare. Okay, so you call this policy as pro-natalist policy. Okay, you can just make a note of it. Effects of net emigration. Emigration, loss of skilled workers. They are going outside, right? So you call this as brain drain. All the brains are going out. Reduced labor force. Yes, obviously, so the economic growth is now slowed down. Lower domestic demand, remittances from immigrants may support families at home, can reduce unemployment pressure if labor supply exceeds demand. So that's about the chapter number 35 on economic development. Economic development refers to the sustained improvements in living standards, including income, education, health, and infra. The stages here are primary, secondary, and tertiary. For primary, we know, right? Stages. We have done the same thing in business studies, right? The same content. Okay. So agri-based, low productivity, industrialization, that's the secondary stage, and tertiary. Measures of development, how do you measure? Real GDP per head, HDI, MPI, access to education, healthcare, clean water and infra. Causes of difference in economic development, income per head, higher income allows more consumption, more savings, more investment. Savings and investment, low income limit savings, which restricts capital formation. Population growth, rapid growth strains resources and services, health, education and healthcare, poor access reduces productivity and human capital. Sector composition, reliance on primary sector limits growth, diversified economies perform better. Export concentration, dependence on primary exports makes countries vulnerable to price shocks. Productivity differences, low output per worker in less developed countries reduces competitiveness. Why governments seek economic development? To raise living standards, to reduce poverty, to improve health and also education. See, it looks like as if we are studying the same thing, right? To create jobs, reduce unemployment, boost national income, to strengthen infra, attract investment, and improve global competitiveness. Conditions for economic development, stable government and institutions, investment in education and healthcare, access to capital and technology, trade openness and infra, and effective legal and financial systems. Impacts of development differences. Yes, please join. High population growth is a pressure on services and employment. International debt borrowing to fund development leads to repayment burdens also, and reliance on primary exports. So instability in the income and trade deficits. Low investment in human and capital goods, weak productivity. Immigration of key workers, brain drain. Trade restrictions, limited access to global markets, and unbalanced economy, over dependence on one sector. Measures to promote economic development, foreign aid, financial and technical support from abroad. World Bank provides fund infrastructure and poverty reduction. IMF stabilizes economy through financial assistance. IMF is for International Monetary Fund, right? Improving education and healthcare, encouraging investment in entrepreneurship, diversifying exports and industries, infrastructure development. How one country's development can promote another is definitely trade link because developed countries will be improving goods and services. Foreign direct investment, so they'll be investing in the developing economies. Technology is transferred. Migration and remittances are there, so they send money home. Okay, and regional population is also there. Joint projects like joint ventures, we say, right? Shared markets. Let us go for the last section, section number 6, International Trade and Globalization. Chapter number 36 deals with international specialization. So, specialization of countries at the national level means when countries concentrate on producing goods and services in which they have a comparative advantage. So, we say they are special in that. Okay. So, India is special in making the artisan goods, handmade. Okay. Example like Saudi Arabia, oil, Bangladesh, textiles, Switzerland for banking and pharmaceuticals. Don't write as Switzerland watches. Okay. Switzerland banking and pharmaceuticals. Advantages and disadvantages for consumers, wider variety of goods and services you get, lower prices due to efficiency and economies associated, higher quality products and extra price. But whereas you go for the disadvantages and over dependence on imports for non-specialized goods because we are not the country Saudi is very versed with oil only. So for all other goods they have to go for importing only. Okay, so non-specialized vulnerability to global price changes and possible shortages if trade is disrupted. For firms, advantages is seasonal. It takes from focusing on core products, access to larger international markets, opportunity for innovation and investment, disadvantages. Yes, John? Vulnerability to demand shocks in specialized industries, risk of over-dependence on one sector, exposure to international competition. For the economy, higher GDP growth through comparative advantage, employment creation in specialized industries, increased trade revenues. Disadvantages, risk of over-specialization, dependence on one product or sector because we are depending on only one product, right? Structural unemployment if global demand shifts. Balance of payment problems if imports exceed exports. Is it okay? So there is a production possibility curve for tractors and cars. So it's an example illustration. So this is for tractors in the x-axis and cars in the y-axis. Okay. So at this level of price, how many units, how many tractors are possible? For 250 cars, tractors are possible. So that's what they say. Likewise, we have trading possibility curve for tractors and link between countries specializing and international trade. So countries export what they produce efficiently and import what others produce better. Creates interdependence between the nations and basis of comparative advantage theory we follow David Ricardo's. Difference between international and international and internal trade. Trade within a country like domestic markets, same currency, fewer barriers, uniform laws, international trade, trade between countries, different currencies, exchange rate risk, tariffs, quotas, and trade restrictions may apply. Greater variety of goods and services available. Is it okay? Should I take over? That's about 36. Now let us go for 37. Free trade and protection. Free trade and protection. Globalization. Okay. What are the key drivers? Reduce the transport rate, transport costs, advances in communication, removal of some trade expense restrictions. Consequences: greater independence, interdependence. Interdependence of one country is depending on another country. Increased trade and investment flows, spread of technology and innovation, cultural exchange and global consumer markets, risk, loss of local industries, environmental damage, and widening the inequality. Role of MNCs operate in multiple countries, often headquartered in developed economy. They bring foreign direct investment, jobs, and technology transfer, can exploit cheap labor. Yeah, that's the drawback. Like they can not exploiting actually. Exploiting is not exploiting. Take the use of the cheap labor. Okay, it's not drawback. It's actually a positive animal. Exploiting is not a negative word, right? Right? Exploiting is not a negative. Influence government policies due to economic growth. Benefits of free trade: countries specialize according to comparative advantage, wider variety of goods and services for consumers, lower prices due to efficiency and competition, and access to larger markets for firms encourages innovation and productivity growth. Methods of production: tariff, tax on imports, quota, limit the quantity of imports, embargo, complete ban. Okay, I'm done in keywords. Okay, anyway, let me take over. Exchange control, restriction on foreign currency transactions, quality standards, must meet the safety and quality rules, extensive paperwork, administrative barriers, BERs, voluntary export restraints. Exporting country agrees to limit the export subsidies, government support to domestic produce. Reasons for and consequences of protection. Protection of infant industries, allow new industries to grow. Production of declining industries slows down job losses and structural unemployment. Production of strategic industries safeguard industries vital for national security like defense, energy, and all. Rising employment and improving trade position protect jobs and reduce trade deficits. So, okay. Production from low wage competition prevents domestic industries from being undercut by for cheaper foreign labor. Production from dumping stop foreign firms selling below cost to sell destroy local competition. Protection from other forms of unfair foreign competition. Subsidies abroad and tax regulation. Is it okay? Let us go for consequences. Higher prices for consumers, less choice, reduced efficiency, risk of retaliation like trade wars, slower innovation, productivity growth, short-term protection may help industries, but long-term inefficiency can. Now it is okay, but in the long term, you have to completely rely on them, right? Yes, chapter number 38. Foreign exchange rates is the price of one currency expressed in terms of another. So, for example, you take one US dollar is equal to 85 rupees. Fixed exchange rate. Exchange rate is set and maintained by the government or the central bank. Devaluation, revaluation. Devaluation is deliberate lowering the value, so devalue. Revaluation, rising the value of a currency against others. So one currency is measured in terms of another currency. So just treat this as demand and supply. Currency is nothing but goods treated as goods. Okay. So you can just compare this one euros and US. Should I take over? Then refer it later also. Floating exchange rate is determined by the market forces, not by the government. So demand and supply of currency will be changed accordingly. Here we will not use devaluation or devaluation. Instead, we use what? Appreciation, which is rise in the value of the currency, and depreciation, which is the fall in the value of the currency. More or less the same curve, same lines, same linear equations. Determination of foreign exchange rate in the market. So exchange rates are determined by demand and supply of currency. So demand for currency arises from where? Import of goods and services, outflows of capital, investment abroad, and tourism abroad. Also the tourism. So that's why India is now planning for more tourist visits. Okay, every 10%. Supply of currency arises from export of goods and services, inflows of capital like FDI and tourist inflows. Okay, that is tourism abroad and this is tourism inflow. Shall I take over? Let's just see this curve bit later. What? Let's see now. Shall I take over? Supply curve is the same. Here is the demand. Here is the price. Here is the quantity. The price increases. The quantity increases. The demand curve shifts to the right. The same figure. Okay. So here we are talking about Indian rupees and US dollar. There we were talking about cars and tractors. In another one case, we were talking about price and quantity with respect to different commodities as well. So here, if you are going to talk about US dollars, you treat Indian dollar as the currency and the US dollar as some commodity. Is it okay? Let me carry over. Is it okay? Costs of exchange rate fluctuations, how money flows, change in trade flows, okay, change in capital flows, okay, speculation in currency markets, government intervention, interest rate changes, and maybe also because of inflation difference, like affecting the competitiveness of the export and consequences of the change in the exchange rate, appreciation, exports become more expensive, imports become cheaper. This is okay, already we have discussed on the right. Depreciation, exports become cheaper, imports more expensive. Okay. You remember any one thing and you just reverse it. There we were talking depreciation, so you remember depreciation. Depreciated. So exports is becoming cheaper. Okay. You remember one thing, other things are all you can manage. That's the reverse. Imports balance of payments, impacts balance of payments, inflation and unemployment. You remember this one? C plus I plus G plus L, this one, right? Effect of change in the exchange rate on the macroeconomic growth, inflation, and employment. Yes, we have done already this one. Or also the balance of payments. Advantages and disadvantages of floating and fixed exchange rates. Floating exchange rate advantages automatic adjustment to demand and supply. Yes, because it's floating rate, depending on the market forces, it gets adjusted. No need for large reserves of hard currency and reflects true market value. Disadvantages can be volatile and unpredictable, may discourage foreign trade and investment. The risk of imported inflation if currency depreciates. Yeah, that's the problem, right? Fixed exchange rates, advantages, stability encourages trade and investment, helps control inflation if pegged to a stable currency, reduces uncertainty for firms and consumers. Disadvantages requires large reserves to defend the rate, may lead to black markets if rate is unrealistic, loss of monetary policy dependence. International competitiveness, exchange rate affects competitiveness of the exports. Depreciation, see the same line repeated, you can strike it out also. Long-term competitiveness depends on productivity, innovation, and quality, not just exchange rates. Is it okay? Now let us go for chapter number 39. I think this is the last chapter. Current account of the balance of payments. The structure of current account is it records a country's trade in goods and services, the income flows and transfers with the rest of the world. See, what are the things it is taking into account? Yes, please join. Countries trade in goods and services, the income inflows, and also the transfers with the rest of the world. It shows whether a country is a net lender or a net borrower. Components, we have first trade in goods, exports and imports of the tangible products. Liquidity, so we talk about tangible products. Trade in goods surplus means export is greater than imports. Is it okay? Deficit means the other way. Trade in services related to intangible services like tourism, banking, transport. Trade in service surplus means the same, okay? Then we talk about primary income, net income from abroad, secondary income transfers without exchange, like for pensions and all. Calculation of deficits and surpluses. Actually, there is a small error in the formula. So current account balance is equal to export. We have this one, export of goods and services. Okay, minus imports of goods and services. Okay, imports of goods and services plus net primary income minus net secondary income. Is it okay? Is it okay? Are you okay with the formula? Shall I take over? Factors affecting exports and imports. What are the factors? Inflation rate. Higher domestic inflation makes export less competitive. Exchange rate. Depreciation boosts exports. Productivity. Higher productivity lowers cost. Quality. Better quality increases demand overall. Marketing. Effective branding and promotion raise exports. Domestic GDP. Higher income increases imports. Lower GDP. Higher foreign income increases demand for exports. Trade restrictions. Tariffs quota reduce trade. Loss of current account deficit. High domestic inflation Imports cheaper than exports, strong exchange rate, low productivity of all quality of goods, high domestic demand for imports, weak foreign demand for exports, and structural reliance on exports. Imports, sorry. Consequences of the deficit, foreign resources. We are not doing well, right? So the foreign resources are falling down. Depreciation pressure on currency, rising external debt, and reduced investor confidence. Possible need for IMF and World Bank support also. That's why we go and get the loan from IMF. When you talk about current account surplus, low exchange rate, so exports become cheaper, high quality of domestic products, high income abroad, low cost of production, high investment income earned abroad, okay, and high workers remittances. Consequences of the surplus, rising, that's the reverse, right? Foreign resource, appreciation pressure on currency, possible inflation if demand for exports is high, trade tension with deficit countries, and stronger economic growth and employment. Policies to achieve the stability of the balance of payments. How you are going to correct deficit? Depreciate or devalue currency to boost exports. Okay. Improve productivity and quality of domestic goods. Reduce inflation to make exports competitive. Promote exports through subsidies and marketing and restrict imports via tariffs and quotas. Encourage FDI progress. How are you going to correct the surplus? Allow currency to appreciate, increase imports, boost domestic demand to absorb more imports, provide aid or invest abroad to recycle surplus, and encourage outward FDI.